In this episode, I have a special guest, Sarah Werner of the Right Now podcast and contributor to Forbes, also co-owner with her husband, Tim Kraus of Right Now LLC. All right, so we're going to talk about how if you're actually a published author, how you're actually poised right now to start a podcast. So, Sarah, tell us maybe first just a little bit about your podcast right now.
Sure. So my podcast is Right Now, which is W-R-I-T-E now because it's a pun because we're writers and that's what we do. And it gives authors like you the time, energy, and courage you need to pursue your passion and write every day. And I do it because I love writing and I love talking about writing, and I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Awesome.
So you asked about how an author knows if they're poised to start a podcast or be on a podcast, and
Right.
that is just a great question. First of all, if you are a published author, you are an established expert in whatever it is that you've written about. And you may know this, you may not. You have a lot to say, you have a message to share, and a podcast is a great way to share that message with a potential new audience.
So how are we, this is great and we're pumped to have you on. There's going to be links to her show in the comments below. I want to encourage everybody on here to go and follow the podcast. You also have a Facebook group.
I do.
I Am a Writer.
It is.
Right?
It's called I Am a Writer, and I started it a few weeks ago, and it's already at 600 and something members.
Wow. Which I am one, so I'm in it.
Because he's awesome.
So how does this work? I have a book. I'm an expert. I've established an area of expertise. How does that get me into this podcasting space?
Sure, and that's a great question. I'm going to answer it in two ways.
Okay.
So first of all, if you're not interested in starting your own podcast, you can be a guest on established podcasts. And you can kind of think of it as blogging, which is something maybe writers like you are a little bit more familiar with, is the world of blogging. And it's essentially audio blogging. And so you can go out and look for established podcasts that maybe are related to what your book is about. So if you are a podiatrist and you've written a book about podiatry, you might look for podcasts about podiatry, which I'm sure there are some. I don't know why that particular example came into my head. But you can also look maybe for podcasts for runners or podcasts for physical health and kind of expand your reach that way. What you would do is just reach out to the host or the producer of the podcast, say, hey, give a little pitch, say I'm the author of this book, I'm an expert in this region, I'd love to be a guest on your show. And it's a great strategy to get your name out there, to get your book out there, and to get yourself established as an expert in a whole new field.
That's awesome. So there's not a lot of magic. It comes down to what you're going to hear us say over and over on the show. Find people who you can add value to their audience and simply connect with them.
Exactly.
Just reach out.
Exactly.
There's no Facebook campaign. There's no Instagram. You don't need to spend any money.
Nope.
Connect with another person.
Yes.
That's awesome.
And if they do want to charge you, maybe stay away.
Right? So
Yeah.
What would they say? Like, hey, I charge 150, 500, something. You don't want to... That's a great point.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. Don't
Avoid those people.
Yeah, avoid those people. Otherwise, it's also a great networking tool. Most of the people that I've met in my industry and other industries have been through podcasting, and so that's great too.
Wow.
I feel like the other question you asked kind of alluded to how would I start my own podcast?
Yes.
And so if you're interested in this, if you are the type of person who loves taking on a new challenge, welcome to the club. It was something that was exciting for me too. I was like, oh boy, I get to learn how to communicate in this new medium and edit audio, and it's actually surprisingly not as difficult as it seems. So I have actually my equipment right here. I have a MacBook, which has this beautiful pink casing on it, which is not necessary.
Nicely done.
And I have this Blue Yeti microphone, which I think goes for about $100.
Yeah,
It's not expensive. It's a USB mic, which means you can plug it right into your laptop. You don't need a mixer. You don't need any of that scary stuff. And a pair of headphones, which I don't have. And just some software like Audacity, which is a free editing software. And iTunes, which is also free. And that's pretty much my entire podcasting package. That's what I use. And basically, you hook up the mic, you start talking. I planned a little bit in advance, and you might want to do this too. Again, it's very similar to starting a blog. So you say, what is my topic? What is my niche? So again, if you're a podiatrist, you say, okay, it's podiatry and healing as related to the feet. And so you'd say, that's my niche. That's what I'm going to explore in my podcast.
Right.
Here's maybe topics for my first 10 episodes. So number 1 is, what is the importance of this? And you could even use the chapter titles from your book, the different segments from your book, to do podcasting episodes about.
I'm going to start grabbing some books.
Oh, yeah, do it.
Great idea. So I can use chapters from my book.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'll pull out Jason Valder's. He's got, could I even go right into my table of contents and be like, listen, here's my first 7.
Yeah, there's your first 7 podcast episodes. And then from there, and you can do each one of those its own episode. You can sprinkle in a Q&A episode in there somewhere. You can do it as a solo host by just speaking to the mic, kind of like what we're doing right now. You can have guests on to discuss things with. It's kind of a fun and exciting world, and it's not as intimidating as you might think.
That's awesome. So, if I have a 7-chapter book, I could even say, here's the first 7, and also I'm going to have a guest on for each 7. There's 14 episodes planned in advance. That's awesome. And I heard you say so the MacBook, a $100 mic, headphones. You mentioned some software that's even free. What's the barriers then? So, how long were you thinking about doing your podcast before you actually launched the first episode?
Oh, what a great question. The barrier for me was fear. And I know that stops people from podcasting. It also stops people from writing. So if you've published a book, you've already overcome that hurdle. For me, I started thinking about podcasting about 1.5 years before I started doing it. And I just kept making excuses. I was like, oh, I don't have time to learn this or this, which is why I ended up going with a simple solution with a plug-and-play mic. So I wouldn't have to learn the mixer.
Yeah.
So I could just jump in and do it. So fear is the biggest barrier. Otherwise, it's relatively low barrier to entry. It's just a lot of the stuff is disparate, and so you do need to know, okay, I need Audacity to record and edit, which is the software program I use. Okay, I need to use iTunes to convert it to an MP3. So you just kind of need to know that stuff, and it's all scattered out all over the place.
And you wrote an article on Forbes about specifically guesting you mentioned. We're going to plug that one into here too. Something else is Sarah is coming on a webinar we're doing this coming Monday, the 22nd, from noon to 1 Central Time. We're going to be expanding on some of these things. We have a former radio jockey, many years, Midco executive. Tom Simmons is going to come on. He's going to ask Sarah some questions. So if you have any more questions for Sarah, put them in the comments below. I'll put the registration link in for the webinar on Monday, totally free. We'll be back on talking about more things. And Sarah, thanks so much for being our very first guest on Ask a Publisher. It's been awesome.
Thank you. This has been an honor, and I love talking with you. This is great.
So now the only barrier, Sarah said, is fear. So get out there, just use your table of contents, if nothing else, and just start. Do the first one. If it's horrible, get it done, finish it, go from there. Right?
Agree. Yep. Just do it.
See you on Monday.